So a very warm welcome to the University of Tokyo Open Campus. My name's Johnny Woodward and I'm going to be talking to you for the next 45 minutes or so and introducing you to the University of Tokyo and why you might be interested in coming to study here. In particular, we'll be looking at a program known as PEAK, which provides an opportunity for international students and those students who don't have any experience of the Japanese language to come and study as undergraduates at the University of Tokyo and get a bachelor's degree. So, without any further ado, let's make a start. So let's start with our first question. Why might you be interested in studying at the University of Tokyo? Well, let's start with the tradition. So the University of Tokyo was originally founded in 1877 as Tokyo Imperial University, and this makes it the oldest national university in Japan. As you can see from the statistics here, it's a pretty large university. We have just short of 30,000 students, and around a third of that, around 10,000 or so, academic and administrative staff. And that's roughly split in half. So about half of those staff are faculty and half of them are administrative staff. The university itself changed its name and became the University of Tokyo as we know it in 1947, and you can see that in the pictures here. So in terms of an international perspective, the University of Tokyo in recent years has been substantially growing in terms of its international presence. If we look to the past, the University of Tokyo has always been extremely famous in Japan as being considered the top national university in Japan. And partly because of the restrictions of the Japanese language, it's only in more recent years that the university has really started to attract more and more students from outside Japan. So that really began with graduate students, but in more recent years, the university started to get more undergraduate students joining. And so as you'll see from the statistics here, there are actually about 4,000 or so international students currently studying at the university. And the university has exchange agreements with many, many top universities worldwide, more than 500 as you can see here. So the next thing I'd like to do is talk to you about the university itself and where it is in the center of Tokyo. So let's go and do that now. Okay, so we're going to go on a whistle-stop tour of Tokyo. We're going to see a few famous places, and we're going to see two of the university's campuses and what they've got nearby. So the university actually has 5 campuses in Tokyo or around, but 2 of them are going to be the main ones that we're going to be interested in today, because they're the campuses that are of interest to undergraduate students. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're going to be joining us today from all over the world, and we're going to start our tour right now looking at South America. Let's go. So we're going to stop first with an overview of Japan, and you can see by the marks in yellow where the Tokyo area is, and now we're going to head on into Tokyo. And we're going to stop when we reach the kind of main part of central Tokyo. You can see a number of places that we're going to go visit. So let's start off by heading right to the heart of Tokyo, the Imperial Palace, where the Emperor and his wife live. And this is a beautiful place to visit. And then let's go to our next stop, which is the old part of Tokyo, called Asakusa. You might go here and visit the cannon and lots of very famous old traditional shopping streets, and you can enjoy all kinds of traditional cultural activities in Asakusa. Let's move on next and head over to Akihabara. Now, many of you may have heard of Akihabara because it's known as Electric Town, and it's the part of Tokyo where you can go shopping for kind of any kind of electronic gadget or a thing that you want. Hundreds and hundreds of shops. And it's also very famous for manga and anime. You'll find lots of cosplayers there and maid cafes and such. So it's a really interesting place to visit in Tokyo. If we head on a little further, you'll see that just a short walk, 10 or 15 minute walk from Akihabara, we end up at Hongo campus. Now, Hongo campus is the University of Tokyo's headquarters. And it's also the largest of the campuses. You can see it even has its own very large pond called Sanshiro Pond, you can see on the right there. So we're going to continue our move. We're going to fly over to the southwest now, and we're going to head to one of the really main centers of Tokyo, which I'm sure you've heard of, which is Shinjuku. Now, Shinjuku station is the busiest station in the world. You can see to the left side all the skyscrapers of Shinjuku, and Shinjuku is a kind of a real hub for shopping, for business, for all sorts of things. On the right there, you can see the rather beautiful Shinjuku Gyoen Park, where you can go and enjoy cherry blossom viewing, for example. Okay, let's keep on. Let's move south. And on our way, we'll head past the rather beautiful and huge Yoyogi Park that you can see there. And then we'll end up at the second University of Tokyo campus that I want to discuss today, and that's the Komaba campus. And the Komaba campus is the other sort of main campus. And this campus is where all University of Tokyo students, undergraduate students, begin their studies. So all of them come here. And later we'll be hearing about the PEAK program, and the PEAK program is centered at this campus. And this is the campus where I am right now as I'm recording this for you. Okay, so we're going to finish up our tour now, right next to Komaba campus, just a 4-minute train ride or about a 15-minute walk. You can find downtown Shibuya. So Shibuya is another kind of hotspot of activities, and very famously, I'm sure many of you will have seen on social media and so forth, this is the famous Shibuya Scramble, where lots and lots of people take selfies, and you can see lots of people there all the time, every day. So a very short walk, and lovely to have Shibuya on the doorstep of the rather green Komaba campus. Okay, so that's the end of our whistle-stop tour for now. So next I'd like to show you some information about the university in comparison with some of the other top universities around the world. So what you can see here are this year's QS World University rankings. As you can see in the rankings this year, the University of Tokyo is placed 24th in the world. Actually, historically, the University of Tokyo has been placed higher in the ranking tables, but as those ranking tables have become more and more focused on the international aspects of the university's dropped down a little. And that is really one of the reasons that we are so keen to encourage more international students and more international faculty to join the university. However, if we look at the same chart, but we now take into account the cost of education, then you'll see that actually the university ranks very, very highly in the world. As you can see in this table, only behind ETH in Zurich and Peking University. So studying at the University of Tokyo really represents excellent value for money. The next thing that I wanted to show you is related to the university's activities throughout its history. As you can see, in its lifetime, the University of Tokyo has had 13 Nobel Prize winners. You can see their names and the subjects that they were awarded the Nobel Prize for listed in the table here.
And research is, of course, perhaps one of the most important aspects of any top university. And as you can see, when it comes to reputation of the University of Tokyo among all the other universities worldwide, then the University of Tokyo is ranked number 7 in the world currently. And this reflects the interaction of scholars with each other at international meetings. It's related to the publications from each university, the quality and the quantity of those. And so you really can see that the university is one of the top academic institutions in the world. Okay, so that's a short discussion about the university itself. What I want to do now is move on to the next part of this presentation, which is to consider this question: what is PEAK? Okay, so let's begin with the name itself. PEAK stands for Programs in English at Komaba. And PEAK then is a program, an undergraduate degree program delivered in English. Komaba, well, what is Komaba? Well, we already saw during the video earlier that Komaba is the name of one of the university's campuses. And we saw the two main campuses of the university, Hongo, which is the headquarters, and Komaba, which is the place where all undergraduate students at the University of Tokyo begin their studies. So if you look here, you can see a few very nice pictures of the Komaba campus itself and various activities going on. So what you can see in the top right, for example, is a picture of something known as TGIF, which stands for Todai Global Interaction Friends. And this is a society set up between international and local students for socializing and for cultural exchange, etc. You can see in the bottom left some international cultural activities taking place on the campus. And as I showed you in the video tour before, there's a picture of Shibuya Scramble, which is downtown Shibuya, just a short walk from the campus, from Komaba campus, and somewhere where our students spend plenty of time when they're not working. So let me say then a little bit more about PEAK and what it is. So this is summarized in this slide here. PEAK offers students from around the world the opportunity to study in English and get a bachelor's degree from the University of Tokyo. So if before the year 2012, if you'd wanted to come and study at the University of Tokyo for your undergraduate degree, then you would have only had the option of studying in Japanese, and you would have had to have a very high level of Japanese skill in order to enter. However, that all changed when PEAK was launched in 2012, and PEAK itself consists of two different courses from which PEAK students can choose when they apply, and these courses are both taught entirely in English. So the first one is the International Program on Environmental Sciences, and the second one is the International Program on Japan and East Asia. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about these programs. So the one thing that I want to emphasize before I move on is that in order to apply for PEAK and to be a PEAK student, you do not need to know any Japanese when you arrive. Okay, so no Japanese language knowledge is required to join PEAK. Of course, if you have some Japanese knowledge, that's fine and that's good, but it's not an impediment. And in fact, our PEAK students have a wide range of different Japanese abilities when they come in, ranging from 0 to native or near native. So the other important aspect of that, though, is that what PEAK represents is not only the opportunity to study for a particular major, i.e. environmental sciences or Japan and East Asia, at the University of Tokyo, but it also provides you with the opportunity of learning Japanese from experts at the same time. So PEAK students are all required, especially during the early part of their study, to take Japanese language courses and learn to speak Japanese. So let's move on and look a little at PEAK itself and how it's structured. So PEAK is a 4-year bachelor's degree, and all 4-year bachelor's degrees at the University of Tokyo have some very important aspects in common, regardless of whether they're taught in English or in Japanese. And that is that the first 2 years of every degree here follows what's called a liberal arts curriculum. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in the next slide. As I've already highlighted, it's compulsory for Peak students to take Japanese language during the first 2 years of their study. So that's why you can see the mandatory Japanese language course requirement on here. Then what happens, all Peak students take a liberal arts curriculum for the first 2 years, and then those students who've enrolled for environmental sciences and Japan and East Asia study different majors during years 3 and 4. So you can see an overview here of the sort of topics that are covered in the environmental sciences program and Japan and East Asia. And in a few moments after I've explained liberal arts, I'll go on to tell you a little bit more about those two programs. Okay, so next I'm going to introduce to you the information about the first 2 years of study in Peak and in fact in all undergraduate degrees at the University of Tokyo. And the first 2 years are referred to as the junior division. Okay, so during the junior division, all students follow a liberal arts curriculum. Now, that might not be familiar to all of you. So what is a liberal arts curriculum? Well, liberal arts comes from this idea of scholarship for human liberation. And the idea behind that is that students, for example, will study a wide range of different subjects from basically across the academic fields. So this ranges from the arts through the humanities to the social sciences to the hard sciences and mathematics. So then a liberal arts education enables students to integrate many different areas of knowledge and acquire the key principles of human thought. So students develop the ability to think freely and autonomously, and this allows them to tackle any problem they might face with a powerful set of critical thinking tools. So what this means in practice is that environmental sciences students and Japan and East Asia students study slightly different versions of the curriculum and this works by which subjects for them are optional and which subjects are compulsory. So for example, for environmental sciences students, during the first 2 years, they have to take courses in mathematics and in science subjects like physics and chemistry and earth science and life science. So after completing the first 2 years of study, the liberal arts curriculum, then Peak students go on to the second 2 years of study, i.e. years 3 and 4, which is referred to as the senior division. And this is where they study essentially for their major. And in this part of the course, of course, we've got these two different programs. Students are either studying for environmental science, or they're studying Japan and East Asia. So let me say a little bit about those two different programs. So first of all, let me start with talking about environmental science. And environmental science, as studied in Peak, is very much an interdisciplinary subject. So the idea really is to understand that environmental problems are not only technical problems, not only problems about failure to maintain or keep sustainable our environment, but they're also human problems. They're to do with human behavior and rules and regulations and how we as humans interact with our environment. And so in that sense, Japan is really actually a very ideal place to learn about environmental science, because Japan has had a long history of dealing with real environmental problems and developing solutions. And in fact, Japan was one of the if not the first country to actually introduce an environment ministry into its government. So, so Japan has a long history of dealing with environmental issues. It's also the case that Japan, and probably this may be an image you have of Japan, Japan is very much one of the leading countries when it comes to science and technology at the cutting edge. And so many of the technological solutions that we need in environmental science rely on new science and new technology and new ideas. And you will be educated by professors from across the university who are experts in various different fields of science and technology.
And Japan in particular has a track record on green technologies, exactly those technologies that are designed to be applied to environmental problems. So the role then that the environmental science program takes is that it's our goal to build students' abilities and knowledge so that they become environmental problem solvers, so they can go on into careers and into the wide world and help develop solutions based both on human aspects of the problems and technological aspects of the problems, using that broad disciplinary understanding, thinking about issues of management, about law, legal aspects, economic aspects, as well as things like the technologies behind energy saving devices and solar cells, alternative sources of energy and so forth. Okay, if we move to talk about Japan and East Asia, then Japan and East Asia is also a highly interdisciplinary course. So students, as I mentioned, in the liberal arts curriculum of the first 2 years will have studied a wide range of different topics and subjects, and learned about those disciplines and the particular skills and mental approaches that they have. And then when moving into the senior division, then they go on to apply that knowledge and apply those ideas to the study particularly of Japan. Japan from its historical, cultural, economic, world relation perspective. So particularly the degree focuses on learning about and examining Japan's position and role within East Asia, and then the role of Japan and East Asia more broadly within the world scheme. So from a political point of view, from a historical point of view, a cultural point of view. And so some of the key aspects of those studies are things like the importance of international relations and resolving security issues and prioritizing those things. The concepts that are espoused are, establishing stable democracy, maintaining vibrant cultures and dynamic economies. And of course, very importantly, a really key element that plays into the discussions in a subject like Japan and East Asia is the tradition of the bridging of the East and the West from many perspectives, be those in terms of philosophical thought, be those in terms of political or social culture. And so what again we aim to develop in JEA, Japan and East Asia graduates, is multilingual skills, multicultural understanding and understanding of the perspectives of different people around the world and different stakeholders across a wide range of issues. So I think that studying the subject of Japan and East Asia really prepares students to be exactly the kind of people who can lead on the world stage and take us into the future from the right perspective of really understanding the different perspectives of different people and different cultures. Okay, so while we're talking about the senior division, I think it's worth mentioning that one of the things that many Peak students do is at the beginning of their third year, before they really get deeply involved in the courses, they take that as an opportunity to go and do study abroad. So while you might think it's a crazy idea, you're thinking, I will go all the way into Japan and study there for my undergraduate degree. But even more so, there's the opportunity that after a couple of years with us, you can then go off to one of our partner universities somewhere else in the world, learn some other courses and some related courses and see things from a different perspective, and then come back and finish your time with us later. So that's another really important aspect of study in the senior division. Finally, the fourth year of both the environmental sciences program and Japan and East Asia, both of those programs involve students doing their own independent research and preparing a graduation thesis. So we can provide more information if you want to know about that. But this is a really unique opportunity during your degree to get first-hand experience of working at the cutting edge of developing new knowledge rather than learning about existing knowledge. So just to finish off, talking about some aspects of Peak, we've talked about the academic aspects, but of course, one of the important things is coming to live in Japan, moving to Tokyo and studying here. And of course, the living costs associated with that are really, really key. So on the next slide, what you can see here is some information on what the cost of living really is to join us at Peak. So on the right, you can see a picture of the new Meiji-Rodai International Village, where incoming Peak students have reserved accommodation available should they choose to take it. This is a very modern development. And on the left, you can see some of our existing Peak students hanging out in the sort of social areas in the dorm. And so I've given a breakdown here of the rough costs. So to join the University of Tokyo, there's an initial one-off admission fee, and that comes down to about $2,500 $282,000 Japanese yen. Then there's the annual tuition fee. So 4 years of study means paying this tuition fee 4 times over the course of the degree. It's about $4,800 per year, or in yen, 5,800 yen per year. And then the additional expenses you're going to have is, of course, accommodation. And if you choose to live in the Meiji-Rodai International Village, the cost is about 83,000 yen a month in bills, which is about $750. And that price includes all your bills, so electricity, water, etc., but also high-speed internet too. And finally, we surveyed Peak students to find out on average how much they spend living in Tokyo, feeding themselves, going out, social life, entertainment, and so forth. And a typical amount is around 80,000 Japanese yen per month, which is about $725. So that gives you a fairly realistic estimate of what it costs to over the course of studying for 4 years at Peak. So sometimes that can seem like an enormous amount of money, but one of the perhaps things that we can do about that is that Peak really offers some very, very generous scholarship opportunities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Peak scholarships now, and one of the key aspects about those scholarships is that when you apply to Peak, you are automatically considered for scholarship. So there's no separate scholarship application. You don't have to fill in extra forms or apply to different agencies. It's all handled by us alongside your Peak application. So first of all, we have at the moment 5 specially awarded, unique, dedicated to Peak, 5 Japanese government so-called MEXT scholarships every year. And these are very generous scholarships. They include a round-trip airline ticket to Tokyo, and then they include your initial admission fee, those tuition fees every year, and they even provide a monthly living allowance of about 120,000 Japanese yen per month. In addition to those, the University of Tokyo provides its own set of scholarships that are almost identical, and we provide 10 of these scholarships per year. And these include the admission fee, again, the tuition fees, and the monthly allowance. The only difference is they don't include the airline ticket to Tokyo. So if we think about the Peak program, the Peak program is a small program, and that's a great thing because it means that you have a wonderful opportunity to work in small groups, get to know your fellow students really, really well, get to know the professors really, really well. So I pretty much know all Peak students, to talk to and by their first names. And in this you get access to this very small community. But what it means as well is we aim to take about 30 Peak students a year, 15 in ES and 15 in JEA. And what that means is, of those 30 students, we're able to offer 15 of them full scholarship. So half of the students who are accepted to Peak can have the opportunity to get full scholarships. Then finally, there are some additional scholarships. We have some travel grant scholarships that are very generously provided For Singaporean students, through the Singaporean Alumni Network, JUGAS, and similarly for Malaysian nationals through the equivalent JAGAM Alumni Network in Malaysia. So they provide round trip airline tickets to students who qualify for those scholarships. And Peak is always looking to add more scholarships, and these are pretty much the very regular scholarships, but very often we'll have other scholarships available too. And it's also possible that after you join Peak, other special scholarships become available, which we inform you about and help you apply for. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say about the scholarships. Now I've been talking for a while, and I think it's probably a really useful time to take a short break and actually hear from some Peak students about what the experience is like. So I'm going to show you a very short film now, made by Peak students, trying to reflect on their experience of studying at Peak. So please enjoy this short video, and then I'll be back to tell you about how you can apply to Peak.
Welcome to a brand new world, a world where diversity is a constant and discovery becomes routine, where norms are challenged and each success is but a sojourn. Welcome to the world of a Peak student at the University of Tokyo. All classes are conducted at the Komaba campus. Peak is a liberal arts program. Students can pursue disciplines of their interest beyond the traditional scope of the major. Through debates, presentations, and class discussions, Peak students get the prized opportunity of exploring pertinent issues transcending geographical boundaries and cultures. One of the most exciting aspects of lessons in Peak is observing the phenomenal array of perspectives from the students, each of them interpreting a single concept in different ways based on their background. There is no better place to get a glimpse of the world. Peak students will be involved in extracurricular activities. Clubs and circles are an integral part of Japanese university life, as students take a breather from their academic commitments and dive into a world of fun, friendships, and the freedom to explore. Flash mobs, band performances, and dances are just a few instances of the exciting prospects of being a Peak student. For a fulfilling university experience with a one-of-its-kind amalgamation of perspectives, cultures, and an enriching academic environment, pick up your pen and sign away 4 years of your life to a promising adventure here with us in Peak at the best university in Japan.
I made Komaba a fun place.
So I'm going to spend a few minutes now guiding you through the process about if you actually want to apply to Peak and how you go about it. So the Peak application process basically consists of two stages. The first stage is referred to as the document screening, where we look at various documents that we get you to provide for us. And after that, we make a short list of successful applicants, and those applicants move to the second stage of the process, which is a personal online interview, and in the case of the environmental sciences program, an additional online mathematics test as well. After the second stage of the screening, we draw up a list of the final successful applicants, and they are then offered places at Peak based on the results of the first and second stages. So the timeline for this process is that students apply for the program typically in November to December. After that, the document screening is handled by us. And then after the document screening is complete, students will be invited for the interviews and the maths test during February and March. And then the offers are sent out in April. As I mentioned before, scholarships are also considered at the same time. So when the offer announcements go out, you'll also find out if you're being offered a scholarship too. So that's an overview of the process. Let me say a little bit about the eligibility for the program. There are some technical details, but the key idea basically is that you need to have studied 12 years of school education. And of those 12 years of school education, your first 6 years of school
at least 4 of those school years must have been taught in a language other than Japanese. And for the second 6 years of your school history, at least 5 of those 6 years must have been taught in a language other than Japanese. If you've got some questions over your eligibility, then you can easily get in touch with our admissions office and ask detailed questions. The second important eligibility aspect is that to apply, you need to provide us with our test score. And those test scores will either need to be national or kind of worldwide standardized test scores. And to apply, you either need to provide us with actual scores, so you've already taken the exams and you have your results, or predicted scores, official predictions of your expected performance in those tests from your school. So PEAK accepts a wide range of different standardized tests, and these include the International Baccalaureate, A-levels or International A-levels, the European Baccalaureate, Cambridge Pre-U, and then SAT and ACT. Beyond that, we accept a wide range of different national examinations from lots of different countries. So if you want to find out what's supported, then I would direct you to our application guidelines. So the key thing that you have to do is that for each system, for each examination or test, we have a minimum score requirement. So before applying to PEAK, you should download our application guidelines, examine Appendix 1, and in Appendix 1 you can check for the particular exam system that you're taking that your predicted or actual scores meet or exceed our minimum required score. If that's all good, if your score is good enough, you're then able, and you meet the eligibility requirements of your education that I mentioned in the previous slide, then you're all good to go and apply for PEAK. Okay, so then when you do apply to PEAK, there are a number of different things that you need to do. The first thing is that the entire process is carried out online. So you register with us and we provide you an account on a special online application system. And from there you fill in all your details in the online application form. And then you need to supply us with electronic copies of a series of different documents. So the first thing is each year we set an essay question, and you need to write an essay responding to that question. You need to provide official school transcripts. You need to provide a certificate of graduation or expected graduation from your school. You need obviously your standardized examination results. So those might be those world standard tests or those national tests that I mentioned. In some cases, depending on what languages you've been studying in at school, you may need also to provide official test scores that tell us about your English proficiency. And finally, you need to provide to people who will provide you with evaluations of your abilities. Okay, so that's basically it for the process of applying to PEAK. Okay, so we're going to draw things to a close now by telling you a little bit about what you can hope if you join as a PEAK student, what the future might hold after you graduate. So I'll say a little bit about what some of our graduates have got up to since they graduated. So, as I mentioned, PEAK launched in 2012, and it's a 4-year program. So our first students graduated in 2016. So the data I'm going to show you is the latest set of information we have. We ask our students to fill in surveys about what they're doing when they've completed their studies. So what you can see, first of all, is that if we look at what students do when they've finished, they're split almost half and half between going to graduate school for further studies or going straight into the workplace. You can see this smaller category of others here. So some students are not quite ready to go into work or study as soon as they finish. Some take a small break, or they're doing the job hunting or preparing for work or preparing for study. But basically the breakdown is between these two. If we look at the employment, you can see that
the large majority of our graduate students, despite coming from all over the world, many of them are going into careers in Japan. And if we look at those students who go on to further study at graduate school, you can see, for example, that quite a large number of them stay in Japan, a large number go to the US and the UK, and then other countries around the world. So let me dig in a little bit deeper into what happens. Let me start with the further studies. If we look at where our graduating students go, so you can see here these lists for our environmental sciences students. There's a wide range of very, very prestigious universities around the world that you can see here that they've gone on to study at. And similarly, on the right-hand side, you can see the same information for Japan and East Asia students who've gone on to graduate school. So those are some of the schools. You can see that they're distributed around the world, and in many cases they offer rather different subjects and different courses. And that, if we look further at that, you can see that what this really shows us is that both the environmental sciences program and the Japan and East Asia program really benefit from this very, very broad yet deep form of education. So our students study across many, many disciplines and become expert in different areas. And what this means is when this translates into future studies, they can really go off in different directions depending on what they've become interested in during their study period with us. So if you look at the environmental sciences students, you can see a huge range of different subjects that students have gone on to study, you know, some biomedical engineering, economics, education, law, mathematical sciences, public policy, and so forth. A really, really wide range. And similarly for JEA, you've got an enormous range of different master's and PhD programs that students have gone on to study in. So there's some IT, international relations, East Asian studies, political science, sociology, visual material and museum anthropology. So I think one of the things is if you're at the stage that you don't know what it is that you might want to do as a career and exactly what you want to study at university, you might think, well, I want to do something to do with science, but I'm not sure what yet, and I don't know exactly what area we'll go into. Then the idea of the liberal arts education and these interdisciplinary programs really can keep your options open and allow you to learn much more about the world and much more about academia before you make any of those decisions. And then finally, let's just take a look at the different fields in which our peak graduates go to work. So again, you can see there's a huge range of different careers straight out of finishing their undergraduate degree. We've got students going into, you know, the kind of financial sector, into the very much business consulting management sector, IT. You've got leisure, sports and tourism, public services, construction, engineering, wholesale, even in retail trade. You've got media and the internet, law, creative arts and design, and so forth. So again, this just speaks to the number of different options you have as a peak graduate. Okay, so with that, I'm going to finish this introductory presentation. I hope that you've enjoyed learning something about the University of Tokyo and the PEAK program in particular. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. This has been quite a long video. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. Bye-bye.